Hello, Dr. Zane here. I wanted to review the functional behavioral assessment interview form that you find for this week of material. As you'll see at the end of this document, if you haven't already, that it's adapted from the O'Neill book. So it's kind of like it, a lot of the same information. It's not the exact form. I really don't care if you use this one for your assignment or the future, or the O'Neill one in the future. But you're essentially getting the same information, and you'll get a good feel for what it's like to use this form. So if you get out your own copy, you could take notes on it, or you can just look at the screen here. We start with just some basic information, of course. Describe the problem behaviors. We want operational definitions. We want to know what it looks like, the topography, and we need some basic information about how often it occurs, the duration of the behavior, how damaging or destructive the behaviors are when they occur. So remember, operational definitions, a little bit of background, answering all those questions right there. The next section is describing the person's social behaviors. And here we're focusing on appropriate social behaviors. This section is good in that it forces the respondent to think of appropriate behaviors that may already exist in the student's repertoire that we might use to strengthen and replace the problem behaviors. Again, we have to worry about function, but again, if we have some appropriate behaviors to work with, we might be able to establish these more rigorously in the student's repertoire, which will help decrease the problem behaviors. So the question at the top of page 2 is an important one. We want to look at the list of problem behaviors and note which ones occur together most of the time. If you can identify some, then it does a couple things. One, it reduces the number of the different functional behavioral classes you may have to worry about. And secondly, some of those responses that occur together could be considered precursors to other ones that occur together. For example, maybe screaming occurs. Every time aggression happens, screaming occurs prior to it. So if you can identify such relationships, then you might be able to intervene on the less intense, less intrusive, less serious behavior and impact the more intrusive and more serious behavior too. So that's one reason why we want to look at that. Well, those are the two reasons. One is that you might reduce the number of functional behavioral response classes, and secondly, you might be able to identify precursors that you could target instead of the more serious ones. So we want to get information about that in that top question. Now, then we get into setting events, ecological events. So we look at the physiological events, medications, then we look at medical or physical problems that may affect the behavior. Think about the discussion this week about Michelson, about the medical assessments, the psychiatric diagnoses. We should identify any psychiatric assessment or diagnosis here. Sleep problems, dietary eating problems, you know that sometimes these sorts of issues can impact the problem behaviors. Now, the environmental and social setting events is a real interesting section. Make a list of the activities where the person is successful and does not engage, and include the times when these activities occur. So we're trying to discriminate contexts in which the behavior problems occur and do not occur, and obviously you can see the importance of this. If we can identify contextual situations where the behaviors do not occur, then maybe we can set those up more in the environment and lower the likelihood of the behavior happening. Okay. So we're on to page 3. Are the activities on the daily schedule predictable? This gets at the issue of predictability. We know, or there's an assumption that the more predictable one's schedule is, the less likely a person is to act out. Sometimes unpredictability evokes problem behaviors. So we want to get some information about that. The same sort of thinking relates to the ability of the person to make choices. So we want some information about that. The next question about a lot of people around the home. Density can negatively impact some people. So we want to get information about the level of crowdedness, and we want to know whether there's any indication historically that the person is bothered or upset with crowded or noisy settings. And then we want to ask about the level of support. If, for example, we indicate that the person receives no support at home or in the workshop, say, for example, the person's working at a job with little to no support, supervision, coaching, that sort of thing, maybe that's why there's a higher incidence of problem behaviors in that particular setting. All right. The next section is very important too. Define specific immediate antecedent events that predict when the behaviors are likely and not likely to occur. I think you can understand the importance of that. If you can set up the behavior to occur, or if you can set up a situation where the behavior is not likely to occur, then that gives you a lot of information about potential function, right? So if you say, if I never give him math, he'll be okay. Well, I think we've just implied that math evokes problem behaviors. So what is it about math? It seems like that would be avoidance in that situation. Okay, so we're looking at settings that are most likely and least likely. Page 4, we're looking at times of day that are more likely and least likely to trigger the problem behavior. People who are more and less likely to trigger the behavior. I worked with a kid once who began aggressing, and we investigated to the point where we learned that he aggressed only towards a particular person, a particular staff person, and to no one else. And so when we learned that, we thought, well, what the heck's going on here? And we did further investigation, and we learned that that staff person was physically beating the individual. So we dealt with that. And then lastly, the activities that are most likely and least likely to trigger the problem behavior. I think I'm going to end here, and we'll pick up on the bottom of page 4 in the next video.